Welcome back to the show, everybody. My name is Kirby Ingalls, and I am here with Richard Kaufmann, the comeback coach. Richard, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, guys. My name is Richard Kaufmann, also known as the comeback coach. I'm the guy that when I first started out, I was the guy you didn't want to be around. I was the guy that, if you guys are in the military, we always knew that guy that was the dirtbag. That was me. And eventually, I made a lot of mistakes.
Mhm.
And because of we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of 9/11. 9/11 changed my life and changed my perspective on things. And that's when I started becoming a leader, was on the evening of September 11th, 2001. So now, I'm a podcast host. I'm retired military, a father of three, and married to my beautiful bride. Now I'm just living a life and trying to, let people know that it doesn't matter where you're from. It just matters where you end up at. So I'm the guy that, I'm the guy that's, I told you so. Some people were like, I knew he was going to end up one way, and I fortunately didn't end up the way a lot of people thought I was going to end up.
Well, thanks, Richard. Thanks for sharing a little bit of insight into who you are and who you were prior to 9/11. I also was a veteran pre 9/11, and I would say probably most people today that are serving or may have served may not remember what it was like prior to 9/11, the complete transformation that not only our military and our country went through, but us as well. I remember I was in Egypt at the time when the towers came down, in a third world country, in a Muslim country at that. And I was living life to the fullest. And all of a sudden, like when I came back, 6 months later, everything had like changed. Like there was TSA, there was barricades, there was this complete transformation of the country. Which kind of leads me to my first question. I've read your book, and I have a pretty good understanding. We've known each other for several years, so kind of help the audience kind of go back in time a little bit and share with us a little bit about what life was like for you growing up. And
Okay. I grew up. My father left when I was 3 months old. My mother was an active addict. We moved around a lot. By the way, my mother's been clean and sober 28 years. She got sober after I did. So, but we moved around a lot. And I went to like 13 different schools before I went to high school. And I had my first taste of alcohol at the age of 12. I was a full-blown alcoholic by the age of 13. Got thrown out of high school for doing stupid stuff. And I figured, I had nothing else left to do. It was either, in my mind, either go to jail or join the military. So I joined the military and actually did both. I went to jail in the military, stayed for 2.5 years. I got 6 Article 15s, 2 field grades. And I think Uncle Sam finally decided that, he didn't need me as a nephew anymore. So he booted me out. And I'm one of the only guys you'll ever meet that actually got back in the military after being booted out and was about to be thrown out again because I had a bad attitude for a second time. They were going to boot me out the end of September of 2001. But because of what happened on that Tuesday morning, my whole life changed and my thought process changed. And I cried out to the Lord, and I became a broken man that day. And I said, Lord, if you give me another chance, he's already given me like 300 chances. I called my company commander, my first sergeant. I said, you know what, I'm sorry. And I want to dedicate my life to helping people that can't help themselves. And my company commander, they heard it all. They heard all the BS before, but they seen something different in me, and they decided to keep me. Thank God. So within 3 years, I became Soldier of the Year, non-commissioned officer, and I finished with over 23 years in the military, National Guard, and active duty time. But I got hurt, or else I would have done 30 years in the military. That was my goal. But once you get hurt and you can't, and you're blind, if you can't see, you can't shoot. So they kind of medically discharged me on 2012 is when I got discharged.
Well, no, I appreciate you sharing all that, insights. I know we have a lot of parallels. I mean, even I had a drug and alcohol problem growing up, and at about the same time frame, about the same ages as you as well. And then it was the National Guard, right, that my grandparents had persuaded me to go into, and they were like, "Hey, you got to get out of here," right? So, because this isn't going to be good for you. You need to go in the military, you learn some values, grab some discipline. Not that they weren't teaching me values, but they knew that that was an opportunity and that was going to open doors up to a lot of different things, much like yourself. And then there, you obviously had challenges in there as well. When you were growing up, just much like myself, like what did you think your life was going to be like when you got older?
And honestly, I never expected, and I told everybody, I'm not going to live past the age of 25.
Mm.
I never had any plans because, like, I'm not going to be here. So, what is there to plan? So I just everything day by day, minute by minute, hour by hour, and whatever happened, happened. So I never planned anything. Now look at, years later, I'm almost 53 years old. So thank God that plan didn't work out.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you, man. Um, you did 23 years in the military. You got that second chance on, well, maybe third or fourth or fifth, I don't know, but whichever one it was on 9/11, and again, that was a transformation for many of us. Not only uniforms and all kinds of other things, but a different war on two different fronts. And our country completely changed, and we're here recording this right after the anniversary of Afghanistan 20 years later, and we're no longer there, with just a small force left in Iraq. But how is your life different than you had imagined? Growing up, and you said your mother was an addict and you were an addict, and you were bad to the bone all the way through the military until that day, and then
Yeah.
things have changed. How is that? How is that different than what you've completely imagined? Like, where are you at today?
Well, I mean, and if you guys, we were talking earlier, I'm actually in New Jersey, and if I stand on the steps of my house, I can actually see where the Twin Towers once stood.
Mm.
So, that's how close I am right now. But, I also live 3 miles away from the parking lot where I was homeless for a year and a half. And here I am, able to own our own home and have, a beautiful family and, beautiful kids and a beautiful wife. So the Lord has really blessed me, but he's kind of took me all different kind of ways. A lot of people, when they succeed, they just straight shot up, and mine went like this and this went round. So, and then after after they, retired me, I was at my lowest point, when they said, Sergeant Kaufmann, you're no longer Sergeant Kaufmann. And that's when I had to figure, who was Richard,
Yeah.
who am, I was always, because once they gave me that second chance, I was that hua guy. I was going to every school, every class, wherever you wanted me to do. I'm here to be super soldier. And then when I was no longer, a soldier, I had to try to figure out, all right, who's Richard now? And that was deep, having to figure out who I was and what my plans were for the next, few in my future now.
Well, that's very cool, man. I appreciate that. So you talked about relationships a little bit. So you mentioned that you have a lovely wife and 3 children, but you
Yeah.
also mentioned a few times already your relationship with God. So Can you kind of talk to us about, if you were always a man of faith, or maybe you came at late age like myself when I was about 33 years old after I'd gone through some tragedies, and, I was rock bottom, and, that's tends to be for me, what I experience when the Father comes into your life and really just blesses you. But tell me about that relationship a little bit.
Well, the first time I ever went to church, or actually my mother took me to go see Jimmy Swaggart back in like the late 70s at, I guess it was Giant State, whatever it was back then. And that was my first experience ever with talking about God or the Bible.
Mhm.
And then, I kind of, when I was in the military, after I got busted a couple times, and they put me on a 45-day restriction and 45 days extra duty, I started getting into my Bible again and started reading them, and I gave my life back to him. And then after the 45 days, I took it back until a friend of mine, and he might watch this when we talk, one of my friends, Sergeant Matt Matorian, he actually led me back to Christ, and that was around 2004,
Mm.
2000, somewhere around there. But I've always felt close to him, but I know that I fail every day. 'Cause no man's perfect. But I feel that I think my relationship with God got better when I stopped calling him God and started calling him Dad. 'Cause I never had a real father, so once I started calling him, once I became a dad, is when I started, calling him Dad, because it's different when you're a father.
Mm.
You want to see your kids happy, you want to protect them and take care of them. So once I changed the definition, the name from God to Daddy, things kind of change. And that's when I started feeling a lot closer to him.
Well, that's what I love about you, brother. I mean, and I say that, brother, there's a lot of ways we can connect on that level, right? Because, it's our Father who art in heaven, right? Because it's our Father. We're brothers in Christ.
Mhm.
Then we're brothers in arms as well.
Yeah.
We served the National Guard and active duty Army together. Regardless of what service, we're still brothers and sisters. But we've also been through a lot of the same things. We had some drug and alcohol related incidents when we were children, and a lot of that, but we also both grew up without fathers. So tell me, I mean, that's really important to me. And, that's like one of the things that I try to support the most with my business now, and the coaching and the podcasting as well. Tell me how father, not having a father had really impacted you, and what you decided to do with what you learned from growing up without a father.
I grew up but now I have to preface by saying, I grew up, my mother got remarried,
Yeah.
and, my stepfather, which I call him Dad now, we had a tumultuous relationship, and 80% of it was my fault, because, he was a guy that would come home, after working 16 hours, 18 hours, and I'm sitting home laying on the couch, and he'd get aggravated, and I would sleep all day, and he finally threw me out. I get it now. Being a dad and a father and a man, I get it now. But and we made him just rekindled for the last couple of years, and he's dying of pancreatic cancer.
Mm.
But me actually got a chance to bond and everything now. But when I didn't have a father, so when we found out my wife was pregnant, I was so jacked and pumped, But then all of a sudden, I had a oh crap moment. I'm like, what do I do? What is a father? How do I become a father? And then somebody, I don't remember who it was. I think it was Pastor T.D. Jakes. He had a book on fatherhood, and I picked it up. And a lot of it was just, listen, you're going to make mistakes, just roll with it, learn from it, watch what other fathers do, watch what the good fathers do, and, follow that role. That's one thing about, like your podcast is amazing. It talks about leadership.
Mhm.
Like when I was at my bottom and I got busted at E1, I started thinking different, and, started to do what the winners did. I started sticking with winners. So that's the same thing with fatherhood. I was looking at people that were good fathers and seeing what they were doing. And, I still mess up every time, a lot. I find myself apologizing to my kids for being stupid. You know, I'll apologize. I'm like, listen, you know, I was wrong for yelling. I apologize. So, you know, I guess I'm just a work in progress. And like they say in the programs, you know, spiritual progression, not spiritual perfection.
Yeah. I love it. I love that. I'm gonna have to quote you on that at some point. I love it. I've never heard that before. So tell me, how has being your father of three now, but how has being a father changed you?
It kind of makes it to where you want to make your kids proud. You know,
Mhm.
you want to like that's why I put the book out, you know, so when I do pass away, we're all gonna go. So nobody gets out of here alive, guys. Sorry to tell you. But you know, and when I met Gary Vaynerchuk, we were talking and he said, just remember, you know, your legacy is more important than is more valuable than your currency. And it really got me thinking, you know, what is my legacy? So that's why I wrote the book and put it out. So when
Mhm.
my 9-year-old daughter is old enough, she'll be able to read and say, you know, that's what dad was like. That's what dad went through. So now it's pretty much everything I do is about legacy. Anything you know, relationships, whatever, it's all about what, you know, building that legacy. So that's, you know, that's my thought on it. Just, you know, when we can leave our kids money,
Mhm.
but we want to leave our kids as being good people, caring, loving, empathetic. So, you know, just try to be a good role model.
Yeah, certainly so. I mean, I love that, and that's a huge piece for me as well. Legacy. I actually just reposted a podcast that I had done recently with Ben Kaloy about legacy and things like that. And I know you know Ben.
I
Ben's
love
a
Ben.
great guy. So we're all pretty close in this little network.
You guys did a great episode too.
Yeah, appreciate that. So I want to ask you another question since we're talking about this legacy thing. Part of, a lot of the times we think of legacy, we're leaving this long lasting memory, something for folks to live up to achieve, overcome. I mean, it could be a lot of different things, but one of the things I don't normally talk about that I want to ask you, because you're ripe and rich in these as well from being in the military. So what traditions, would you like to pass on down to your family or to other, maybe first responders? Because I know you work with those folks, so there's probably some traditions that you want to pass on. And what might some of those be?
Well, like 3 or 4 years ago, my daughter dressed up for Halloween as a police officer, and
Mhm.
that was pretty cool. I want my kids to respect the police departments, first responders. Like my kids are taught, if you see a police officer, go up and thank them. Just say, you know, thank you for what you do. I appreciate you, because you don't hear that enough. You
Mhm.
know, just like the National Guard, you don't hear anything about the National Guard until crap hits the fan. So that's one thing. Now, my family, we were joking about this yesterday. They call it Kaufmann time, you know, where if you're 5 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late, you know, always be 15 minutes early for whatever you do. But I think, you know, passing on, like my son, you know, he didn't think he was going to make the soccer team, but he
Mhm.
started showing up at soccer practice an hour early every day, you know, running the practices. And now they made him team captain. So sometime, there's never a traffic jam on the extra mile. And try to teach my kids that, just do whatever you do, give it 110%, and you'll succeed in life. So I think, if we could teach our kids, if we could leave our kids that, they're always going to be successful no matter what they do. So I think, like I said, like Gary said, your legacy will always be more valuable than your currency.
No, I think it's valuable advice for everyone to hear. What is it like being Richard Kaufman today? So you're an author, you're a podcaster, you speak on a regular basis. You're the comeback coach. So tell us a little bit about what that looks like and what your typical day looks like.
Oh, well, because one of my friends, his name is John McCaskill.
Mhm.
He's a retired Navy SEAL commander,
Mhm.
and uh, he wrote a great book. And something that I'm trying to change is I'm trying to change my rituals.
Mhm.
They say, your night ritual and your morning ritual will dictate the rest of the whole day's ritual.
Mhm.
So, at night, I try on the weekdays. not watch any TV, any blue light. I listen to, maybe podcasts or something before I go to bed at night. So I'm not thinking about anything negative overnight. And of course, I do my prayers when I wake up, before I go to bed. And then when I wake up, I say, if I open my eyes and I can see, because a lot of people, don't realize when you're blind, you go through a lot of mental stuff when you're blind. So when I wake up, if I open my eyes and I can see, I just say, thank you, Lord. You gave me another day. Let me do something positive with it. And my friend John's book he has a book called Embrace the Suck. He talks about, the first 15 minutes of your day, don't look at your phone. Maybe just go sit on the couch, do a couple of breathing exercises, and just try to, have a little bit of peace for 15 minutes. And that's the way I set my day up. And then thank God, now with the podcast, it keeps me really busy. I'm still doing a lot of interviews, but thank God for Calendly because it saved my life. Things on my calendar. I got to make sure I have everything.
Yeah.
Calendar, or else I'm just totally lost. And then a lot of times it's been going back and forth with my friends, from the tribe, talking to them. I talk to a lot of people that are still struggling with. I look for ways to try to bless people. So I usually go through my Facebook feed, and if somebody's struggling, I'll be like, "Hey, Brian, are you okay, bro? You want to hop on a call?" And sometimes that's all somebody really needs is like somebody just to be there for them. And there's always been, there used to be a group, I don't know if they're still around, called the Promise Keepers, and they always talked about standing in the gap for somebody. For me, I in 1989, I was looking at 5 years jail time for grand larceny, and the guy that I robbed, which was a police officer, actually gave me a break, and he decided not to send me to jail. So and then when at 9/11, I was about to be thrown out, and my company commander, which is still a friend of mine, Scott McDaniel, thank you, sir. He stepped in the gap for me. So there's always somebody that's been in the gap for me. So I want to be that guy that, if you're struggling with something, I'll take the arrows for you, but just know that you're never going to be alone again. And that's that's why we had a mental health summit today. I decide on April 3rd, and I think we might be doing it this year. It was a free mental health summit for first responders, police officers, first responders, and veterans. So it's all about giving back. Everything I do, I don't make money off of it. I know my podcast, I don't monetize it on purpose, because then, people will know, well, he's not in it for the money. He's just in it for the change. So that's my goal, is just to save 1 million lives. So that's what I do now. And like I said, I speak. I have a Facebook Live show every Monday night called the Monday Night Comeback. And I have friends like you that, I could just, if I'm struggling with something, I could just reach out and be like, "Hey, bro, I'm struggling." And I know you'll be there for me. And I want to be there for you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for sharing that. I'm kind of curious what got you into this line of work where you were working with first responders and helping people overcome challenges and using a lot of that resilience training that I'm sure you received through the military to
Well, what happened was this whole time I was in the military, I always had a job at a gym, at GNC, Vitamin Shop. I was always in the fitness industry. So, I've worked with people from WWE, NFL, Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
And one of our friends, Donnie Boyven, had me on his podcast. And we were talking about, what I was doing. Because at the time I was working with guys from the WWE. And then he started asking me about my backstory. And every time I wanted to talk about my front story, he kept going back. And, he said, there's so many fitness guys out there. He's like, but not a lot of people have been through all the crap that you've been through. Maybe you can use your story to help somebody else. And that's when the whole book came about. And that's when, after I met Gary Vee and we chatted for a little bit, that's how the podcast started. So, I never planned to be a writer or cause like, if you read my book, it sounded like it was written by an 8th grader, because I meant it that way. There's some misspellings in there, but it sounds like my voice when you read it.
Mm.
It wasn't, it wasn't ghost written. So, I just want people, I just want to be the real me. I'm the same guy on social media that you'll see me when we go to the mid conferences and stuff like that. And I just want to be that guy that's relatable, that somebody can talk to. And like, I can't picture myself sitting down with Jocko and having a cup of coffee. But there's certain people I can sit down. I can say, you know what? I can see me sitting down with Ed Milet and having a cup of coffee. And I want to be that guy that's relatable, where people be like, you know what? He seems like he's got it all together, but you'll see on his posts on Facebook, sometimes he's still struggling. And I can relate to that guy. And I want to be the relatable guy.
That's cool. That's cool, man. I appreciate you mentioning our good friend Donnie Boyven. He's a little rough around the edges, but we still love him. So
Yep.
I've been trying to get him on this podcast a few times, and we keep hitting and missing for different reasons. But I think we got something coming up here in the future. So we'll get.
Yeah, his was the first podcast that I was ever on was a Success Champions with Donnie Boyden.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. He's good at holding people accountable and getting them to do what
Yeah.
be doing. So I'm not surprised that he was part of that story about the book. So no, I appreciate that. That's there's some really cool insights. You know, I know you talked a little bit about the your blindness, leaving the military. You want to kind of help tie those two together for us, because I know that you explained a little bit more about it to me before we got on the show here tonight, but kind of help people kind of key in on that a little bit and understand the connection between the two.
Yeah. Well, if you guys ever watch TV, or if you've ever been in the military, you know what a Humvee looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was, vehicle broke down. I had to back my vehicle up. Now, if you guys ever driven in a Humvee or was ever in a Humvee, everybody knows as soon as the vehicle stops, take off your hat, put on your salt cap. You don't ever wear your Kevlar. For some reason, I did that day. I don't know why. It was a God thing. And it was a brand new private, he was a E2, I think. And he didn't really know what he was doing. It was his first time. So as I'm backing him up, he must have seen something different, so instead of hitting the brakes, he hit the gas and ran over the whole right side of my body and ran over my head. But the only thing that saved me was the Kevlar. And I was okay. Back then I was jacked. I was like 173 shredded. And I just got up, shook it off. I'm like, I'm all right. I'm all right. I got this. And I got back in the vehicle, and within 72 hours, I lost my total vision in my left eye. And in the military, if you can't see, you can't shoot. But I finished AT because I wasn't about to quit, because I was a super soldier. So I didn't go home. I just stood my course, did what I had to do. And then when I got back, I went to a regular doctor, and he's like, I can fix your eye. I'm like, great, let's go for it. And he's like, if I don't have 10 grand cash, I can't touch you. So I didn't have 10 grand cash. So I had to go blind. And that's how I became blind in my left eye. And in my right eye, if you guys don't ever drink 5 energy drinks in a day, that's not good. But, I got hooked on energy drinks, and my sugar was high. And one day, all of a sudden, pop, my retina popped off my eye. So now I'm blind in my left eye, and then I'm like 80% blind in my right eye. But, they say God works in weird ways. So I said, Doc, just check my bad eye. And he looked at me and he's like, that's not your bad eye. He's like, you just have a cataract. I'm like, cataract. And he went and they put a new lens on, and all of a sudden, boom, I could see by like 50 to 80% better. Somehow the retina reattached in my bad eye. So now my bad eye is my good eye. But and the military decided that they didn't need me anymore, but they can't just throw you out. They kind of put you in something they call it a warrior transition unit now. Mm-hmm. And for a year and a half, I had to go to every drill, and when I went, I decided, everybody else was playing checkers or playing, cards. I would do that too, but I started getting into books, I started getting into self-help books, and, I started reading books by Robert Kiyosaki and all this. And they kept mentioning a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk. And I'm like, who is Gary Vaynerchuk? And then I started listening to his podcast, and started reading his books. And then one day somebody said, you know what? Gary's father lives in New Jersey and has a liquor store in New Jersey. So my wife drove me there, and Gary happened to be there. And I got to hang out and talk with him for a little while. And that's when the whole thing, he said, I said, I want to start a podcast. And he's like, well, what do you do? And I told him everything, the comeback. And he's like, so you're the comeback coach then, right? I'm like, okay. Yeah. And then, as we talked, and I said, Gary, I'm not leaving here without, a nugget. You're going to have to give me a nugget, or else I'm not leaving. And he said, you know what? If you want to be successful in social media, people have to find you. He said, yeah. He said, but something, what way you can do that is if you just hashtag the comeback coach on everything you do. From now on, people will be able to see all your social media with just one hashtag. And that's one thing that I did. And now people, if they want to just find out whatever I'm doing, they could just hashtag the comeback coach, and it comes up on everything. So that's just a tip for you guys that are doing your own podcast or your own business. Make yourself a hashtag. It works, and it's free.
No, it's really cool. I appreciate you sharing how your time in the military has affected you, and your relationship with Gary, and you mentioned several other people on here already. You've been touched and impacted by a lot of people, but I'm going to have to ask you a really hard question. So I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this for me or not.
Let's go for it.
So who has been the biggest influence on you up to this point?
I'm going to go with two. I'm breaking the rules. First will be my wife.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, the reason was my wife knew me when I was that 17-year-old kid that was struggling with addiction, and I was a wild child, and she loved me even when I was unlovable. And then now she's been through everything with me. And now she literally has my blind side, literally. So I would say she, the number one person. And then the second would be Ed Milet. I think Ed Milet has probably been one of my biggest influences. Gary Vee's great, but Ed is great, but he also has he's also a believer. So that helps, sometimes when you're struggling, you just want, and I've talked to Ed a couple of times, and he invited me down to speak at one of his events, and I couldn't go because of my eyes. But I think I'd say my wife definitely number one, and Ed Milet would be the second influence.
Well, really cool. Thank you a lot. I appreciate that. So, I mean, that kind of lends itself to my next question, because you've had a lot of the experiences and been through a lot of the things that you're helping people with today. I mean, veterans who are transitioning, drug and alcohol abuse, having to change careers and transition. What experience have you had that has helped you see your gifts that you have so you can help these folks just a little bit more clearly?
I just think it's because I think it's what other people, I don't know how to say it. I've seen a T-shirt a while ago. It said, "Heroes talk about themselves, but legends get talked about." Mm-hmm. And it's more of what other people say about me than what I say about me. Mm-hmm. So I'm that guy. Like, I was on a podcast the other day, and they're like, "You have a book," and I'm like, and I didn't even remember even having it out. And he's like, seriously, it hit number one on substance abuse on Amazon. And I'm like, I don't think about it because I'm more about trying to help others.
Yeah.
Worry about, what I'm going to get out of it. And I think, like somebody asked me one day, if you could be a superhero, what would you be? And I would be empathy man, because I try to be empathetic to people that are struggling, because I've been there. I've been there and I've done it. So, and a lot of people, I think, even veterans or, even police officers, there's that thin blue line in the military, there's a thin green line that, if two brothers are out having dinner, we could just automatically, even if we don't know each other, we can get deep. We can talk about whatever. And then, but when it comes to civilian comes, we kind of clam up. So, that's why I think a lot of people like to talk to me, because I've been there, I've done that, and I don't have any, I can't say, well, you're doing this wrong, you did this wrong, because I already did it, so
Yeah.
they don't feel like, they're like, oh, well, what is he going to think about me? And, and like I have people that I've talked to, and there's a lot of people that we know together, we both know that have talked to me, and whatever they said, their secrets are going to the grave with me.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that. I know that. I know the company you keep. So, you talked about podcasting a while ago again, and obviously you're a podcaster. You mentioned that earlier as well. And this would be an interesting question for you. If you could interview anyone, right, living, dead, who would it be and why?
I think, I've interviewed a lot of people now. Now I think I'm up to like 300 episodes,
Yeah.
350, something stupid.
Mhm.
And I interviewed a lot of great people, veterans, police officers, authors, 7, 8-figure earners. I'd want to talk to Ed Milet,
Mhm.
because, when I interview somebody, as you've been on the show,
Mhm.
um, we go deep. We go deep into the past. And they call me the GI Joe, the Joe Rogan of GI Joes, because I'll go deep on you. I'm the male Oprah, so I'm going to go deep. And I would love to really talk to Ed Milet and say, Ed, now that your father's passed and he was a recovering alcoholic,
Mm.
how did that make you feel today? And how did it affect you as a father? So I would try. I wouldn't even mention the jets, the houses. I would want to get to know Ed, and and what he's really like behind the suits and the whole jacked up, and the jet flying and all that. So that's why I would love to have him on the show, because I think he would get real with me.
Really cool, really cool. Honestly, I was kind of surprised. So I've thought you would be somebody else, but um, nobody I knew of. I just never thought you would say Ed Milet. So, uh, thank you for sharing. That's awesome. So let me ask you this: what are you the most proudest of?
My kids, um, my son, my oldest is, he's at Coastal Carolina. He's a sophomore and he's
Mhm.
kicking butt. My youngest, my middle child is, he's amazing. Like I said, he's captain soccer team, and he's crushing it in school. And my daughter goes in 4th grade, starts tomorrow. So I would say I'm most proud of my family. I'm very grateful to have a family. Being the guy that, when I was younger, I could never picture having, um, a family and having kids and a wife. I just never pictured it. So, like the day my wife, my wife, it was funny. The day, I don't think I've ever told a story on a podcast. The day my wife said, honey, we're having a baby. And I was flipping out. And I didn't believe her. I thought she was joking around. So I was like, where do you get the baby testers from? She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, those tests. And she's like, at the store. She turned around to do something. I shot out the door. She didn't know I was gone. And I bought 2 tests just to make sure that she was pregnant. It was the greatest day of my life. So my family is definitely the proudest thing that in my life, my family.
Oh man, that's pretty cool. I would say that that's probably the same for me. I would tell you that my reaction was probably a little different than when my wife told me. Um, I knew, right? And I was just like, she was like, I'm pregnant, and I'm like, okay, yep, I did that. That was gonna happen. I participated in that.
Like it was, and I like one of the things that I try to be, there's fathers that are there you know, but I always wanted to be involved. Like
Yeah.
I was the first person to ever change my daughter's diaper.
Mm,
I went to every doctor's appointment I could. You know, I I walk her to school every day. Thank God for my injury because now I can take her to school. So
mhm,
I, there because there's a difference between giving presents and
mm.
giving your children your presents. And I think that I try to be there as much for my kids as I can. And thank God for the injury because now I'm able to put my daughter to bed at night. I'm able to take her to school. So sometimes God has different ways of dealing with stuff.
Yeah, I think that's you talk about presence, and I think that's quite interesting because I remember when I was in the military and sergeant major of the army, Daly, I think he was a couple sergeant majors of the army years ago, was around, and he talked about being present and engaged as a leader. And for some reason, those two words, present and engaged, well, three, but I'm not counting the and, but present, engaged, really resonated with me. First of all, you got to be present. And then, because sometimes leaders just aren't present, and then they have to be engaged. And for me, that took on a whole new identity because I saw a lot of leaders present but not engaged, but then leaders that were engaged, but they really weren't present, if that makes sense. And I began to think about that when it came to fatherhood too, and being a husband. Like, am I present and engaged, or am I engaged but not present? And so, and if I'm not both, then I'm probably wrong. So, sometimes that's putting the phone away, turning off the TV, paying attention to what people are saying. But I realized that I was absent in one way or the other, and it's really sometimes it's no different than growing up without a father. Both of us didn't have a biological father in our lives, and we might as well have been one of those, because just being a warm body in the house, and that can be a form of fatherlessness in itself. And uh, I think that was really some sound advice. And I'd read an article. I mean, he didn't even tell me that. I just was reading an article one day, and he talked about being present and engaged, and I was just like, boom, my mind was blown at that moment. um, so that was
You know,
really cool.
with leadership, like once I became an NCO, I started to live the NCO creed. I always put everybody ahead of me, trying to further them. And it was, I think, don't know the quote. I think it was from Zig Ziglar, but it might not be. That people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And
Right.
if you get, if we're talking about leadership here, if you get somebody a leader that gets to know you on a personal level, you're willing to literally go through walls for them
Hmm.
because they know that you care about them as a person, and you're not just sergeant first class or first sergeant. You're known as Joe, and
Yeah.
I know you have 3 kids and you have a wife,
Hmm.
and your college is coming up and what college the kids are going to, because that's when you start building relationships. And in business, you have to let people know that you care about them, or else your business is never going to grow. You'll never have a strong team. And that's number one thing of lead. Like even Gary says, the best form of leadership is care.
Mm.
Because once people know you care about them, they're willing to go through walls for you. So that's something we should, as far as leaders go, we need to sometimes just listen, because there, like you said, there's a difference between hearing and active listening. There's a difference.
Mm. Yeah.
And once you do that in your in your household or in your team in your business, I think that's when things start taking off, is when you start being, like you said, present.
Well, hey man, it's been a really cool conversation. I got about four more questions for you. We're kind of winding down here on our hour, but you're a man who've done many things, and you've taken a lot of risk in your life. Some, riskier than others, and we've all been there, and we've faced danger together, and we've done some really stupid things we probably would never do again, right?
Yeah.
Um, on the edge of a bender at times or two. But what's the one thing that you need to do now that scares you the most?
Getting my podcast out there to more people's ears, so we can change more lives.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's scary when you're okay. For like me and you could be talking and say,
Mhm.
I'm going for number one.
Mhm.
But when you put it out in public that you're going for number one,
Yeah.
it's the accountability. And a lot of people, will doubt you. You'll have your pushers that are going to push you forward.
Mhm.
But then you have people like I'm having a course with a friend of mine, James McNeil, about imposter syndrome. So that's the thing. Sometimes I think, yeah, I'm going for number one. But then that same day or the same minute, I'll be thinking, who are you to go for number one? So I think that's one thing that I'm going through now that scares me the most.
Well, that's really cool. I mean, and just to come out here and say that and to have it be broadcasted live and it's going to be out there forever now.
Yeah.
And that's pretty bold. I mean, and I would say you've probably already done the scariest thing that, you probably needed to do, because going to number one is probably the easiest thing. Saying it is, and putting it out there so people hold you accountable, is probably the scariest thing. So, uh, I appreciate that.
But it's not, and again, it's not to be popular or anything. It's
Yeah.
just to be, if I get more people to listen, the more people lives I can change. So
Yeah.
it's more impact than it is about, being famous or whatever.
Well, I mean, and then having to follow up with all that, and helping them folks along and changing their lives and having the resources and the ability to do that. So, I mean, there's a tall ladder that you got to climb still. So, but no, man, I really do appreciate that. And I really do appreciate you coming out here and telling us that and sharing, what scares you the most. So, you've come a long way. Where do you think you're going to be at in about 10 or 20 years? Or who do you
Uh,
think you might be?
I could see myself with my wife and my kids, or they'll be out in college and everything. I could see us in a nice house by the beach with a pontoon boat and enjoying life, but still being able to help people that are struggling, still get involved in the community. So that's where I see myself, and just growing, because I'm getting big into mindset. I'm
Mhm.
listening to a lot of mindset, a lot of strategy, and a lot, and like I read a book or listened to a book from 1920
Mhm.
and they were talking about mindset
Mhm.
and who your circle is. So now, hopefully I'll get more further along and more educated on mindset, dig deeper into mindset.
Yeah. So how would you at this point define true success? So you've risen to the top. You've become, the comeback coach. You've overcome a lot of hurdles in your lifetime. I mean, you've become a published author who's number one in alcohol and addiction. Um, on the Amazon's list. So, you've achieved a lot of accolades, but if you remove those accolades and you look for that intrinsic motivation, right? What's going to give you the most fulfillment? What is true success for you?
For me, success, like I had a uncle, he died a multimillionaire, and he only had like a fourth or fifth grade education, but worked his fingers to the bone.
Mhm.
He said, you know what? He said, I got all this money, but I can't buy a single day. And I've had a lot of uncles in the past that really affected me. And so for me, I think in the end game, success would be my funeral, when people come and hopefully have to have 3 or 4 services, because I affected that many people.
Mhm.
And for people to come up to my wife and my kid to say, you know what, your husband and your dad, he really changed my life. He made sure I put down that gun, that I didn't eat my gun that day.
Mm.
I think that would be success for me.
Yeah, no, that's pretty powerful, man. With that being said, what will your ripple effect be? So I know that you're a man of faith, and you're probably familiar with this or this quote that's been attributed to Mother Teresa. But if you could cast, a stone in the water, and it would create a ripple effect, what would that be for you?
That would be and this happened to me probably, it's been a couple years now, but I got a text message saying, I was watching one of your videos because I do a fun Monday Night Live
Mhm.
show week, and he said, I had the gun in my mouth. He said I had the round chambered, and I was about to pull the trigger, and but you said something to me that hit me, and I immediately put the gun down and called 911. And now I'm like, I think he was like 6 months sober then.
Mm.
And so just knowing that that gentleman didn't eat his gun that day, and now he's a father and going to be a grandfather, and that it didn't change the whole world, but it changed his world. And in turn, that will put the ripple out. So if I can, have more experiences like that, then that's the kind of ripples I want to affect.
Wow. Uh, you're talking some pretty powerful stuff, man. I mean, we're here at the end. So is there anything that you would like to say that you haven't said already, or anything you would like to tell the listeners at this point?
Yeah. I Last April 3rd, we had a mental health summit, which we had 10 different speakers like Robert Garcia, a bunch of people that are in the like Annette Wittenberger, Tammy Moses, that were in the mental health space. And the name of it was called Today I Decide. And I believe that those are the three most important words in the English language. Today I decide. Like on that morning of September 11th, I was not the same person when I went to bed as when I woke up that morning. And that was that day I decided that I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be that selfish guy anymore. So if anybody's out there listening to this, if you're struggling with anything, um, just make that decision that you want to change. Because once you make that decision, then all you have to do is act upon it. And the hardest part is making that decision. So if anybody's listening out there, remember the three most important words in the English language are today I decide.
Well, very cool, brother. I want to thank you for your time. Please let everybody know in case they're listening, and if they want to, we'll have the dedicated show page to this episode, in the comments and the links below. But where can everybody find you if they're just listening on the audio version?
Well, like Gary Vaynerchuk says, just go to your search bar right now, type in hashtag the comeback coach, and it'll come up on all my social media, everything that I'm doing, all in one hashtag. And it's free. Free.
Well, free is better. So
Free's for me.
awesome. So, hey, man, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the effort, and just sharing your story with us, and then what you're doing, and just the impact that you're now having on just not only veterans but first responders and the world. And you are a tremendous man, and definitely a blessing to all of us that are in your world. So again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Definitely. Like I said, I'm grateful for your friendship. We've been friends for over a year. If you guys want to know a great inspirational story, definitely check out the episode with Ben Killoy with this gentleman. It'll knock your socks off. So definitely check that episode out. So you got to drop that link also.
All right, Richard, I will do that as well. And thank you for your time. And again, it has definitely been a pleasure.
All right, brother. God bless you and the family.
All right, thank you.